Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Zini. I'm an elected official here in town and a volunteer. The first selectman asked me to talk to you folks tonight about the Plan of Conservation and Development, or the master plan. It involves the Planning and Zoning Department, but it also involves how Monroe moves forward in a 10-year cycle. We have some issues, and the Plan of Conservation and Development has brought some of those issues to light. Planning's been kind of a dead issue in Monroe for well over 20 years. The Planning and Zoning Commission is tasked with two processes: master planning on behalf of the town as elected officials, and working as your zoning land use body. The Commission's done one of those two things in probably the past 20 to 25 years, and the record pretty much shows it. The town is paid every 10 years for a book called the Monroe Plan of Conservation and Development. We completed one in 1970, 1980, 1990, and then again in the year 2000, costing us anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 to matriculate those plans. In digging back through the records, I'm going into my third year on the current term that I was elected by you gracious folks to do this job. We haven't touched these last three plans in close to 30 years. We haven't implemented much of what's been in those plans. A handful of items have been selected, detailed, and brought forward, but most of what we spent our hard-earned taxes on in these books went right in the trash and collected dust. It's interesting. Last year, in 2009, as mandated by the state of Connecticut, every 10 years the town is required to submit a new master plan. The state of Connecticut no longer calls it the master plan, they call it the Plan of Conservation and Development. In Monroe not having done anything for 10 years with its master plan, it became prevalent to the commission that we had to give it to the state this year. For those of you that aren't aware, if we do not complete an efficient master plan that's updated, not necessarily brand new, but revised and updated, the town actually puts itself on a potential blacklist to lose all of its state funding. Now, a lot of people shrug and say, well, will that happen? Well, I don't think any of us want to find out if that will happen. It's just one of the criteria the state has in asking us to do our diligent job in planning and making requests for funding. Interestingly enough, and having said that, looking at the records for the planning side of the commission has had virtually no budget increases in over 20 years. It hasn't asked for any money. The only money that's come forward is by direct appropriation every 10 years in an emergency mode to try and get the plan done, much as we did last year. We came forward, needed $110,000. We had to put it in the plan because it's required by law to get this plan done every 10 years. In going through that process, what we noticed was that we're basically creating a plan that's a dormant waste of money. So we look at this and we say, what are the general subjects of the Plan of Conservation and Development? It covers such items as town infrastructure, natural resources, economic development, overall growth and development of the town. I'll flip into the new index of the current draft. Regional and state planning interface, including regional with Bridgeport Greater Regional Planning, land use, zoning, community character, population growth and trends, both increase and decrease, households and family demographics, transportation and infrastructure, housing, economic development, environment and open space, parks and recreation, municipal facilities, including public safety and schools, future land use, and implementation of all these tools. That's what our master plan is supposed to be doing, and it doesn't do. And in the prior seated commission and the current seated commission, what we've noticed is that we actually have been printing all this paper and not using any of these tools. The current work on the POCD that we contracted with last year, we're about 9 months into the process right now. In that process, which is required what's called validation by the state of Connecticut, we do such things as we hire a professional consultant who's required to validate the data, such as doing a survey. And there was a random survey. Now, this is not a survey to every single person in business in Monroe, but it's a random survey sampling. And it's interesting how many things that survey brought to light. I just want to let folks know that survey will be posted online within the next month. It's in the process of being put together for publishing on the town website. The commission is currently getting ready in the next month to release the current draft of the proposed 2010 plan that will talk about all these subjects. The ratification of the plan is coming this fall, and public input will be solicited up until that time, including a full town-wide public hearing. Now, interestingly enough, some of you folks may have heard or seen about it. There's been articles in the paper, it's been on the website, there's been various emails, posters, cards sent out. We've been lucky that we've had probably 60 to 120 volunteers residents who are not on any board or commission, they're not elected officials, step forward to help try and put input into this plan to figure out where Monroe's disconnect is, where we come in this room every budget cycle and can't figure out where we fall on our knees. It's interesting. If you look at the shortcomings discovered, what the Commission has found in the past 9 months, these are just a few of the items, not all of them. We have no long-term road planning repair or maintenance budget or a budget plan to pay for that. And I've met with several of these department folks here who are very dedicated to what they do, and it's not a critique, especially of Art Baker, of not his plan, but Art's hands are tied because there's basically no long-term plan. Art's living to repair roads year to year. There's no long-term capital projects planning process. Now, we're not talking about short-term capital. We're talking, we identify capital projects, but then we set up no master plan for the long term. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. What do we do with our resources? How do we pay for them? If we need new, what do we do with that? Another item that came up, there's no long-term plan to keep the town information accurate. You heard from the Information Resources Director a little earlier about the town's electronic systems. We found out something even more interesting. The POCD is full of maps. They're conceptual maps, but they're guide maps to help the various elected boards and commissions do their jobs. We found that most of these maps have not been updated in 25 years. Most of them have accurate information. A few of the newer plans, the 1990 and the 2000 plan, actually deleted data that was accurate. And we also found out right up through such things as the town's assessor's maps are inaccurate, something we base our taxes on. So we found there's a huge pitfall in town hall. And again, this is no one's specific fault. This is all of us as a group discovering where we have problems in the process moving forward. From our Economic Development Director, and I've been meeting with the Economic Development Commission, another interesting place. There's no long-term economic development plan to attract business to Monroe. We do it on a short term. We jump at who jumps at the town, but there's no long-term 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year plan to actually seriously bring business into this town. There's no coordination with the zoning side of our commission to actually figure out what works to bring business taxes into this town. I've had the luxury of living here for a few years, and I've gone to several budget meetings and public forums over the years, and it's interesting what I hear because folks say there's several departments that have issues, including the school department. Everyone's struggling to survive in the town, but there's no income to pay for it. Well, if you look at some of the stats that the Commission's been seeing through the planning process, it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary. There just isn't any vision for any business to be brought into this town. And that's not EDC fault or Vinnie's fault. It's just the town as a whole has not come together and said, what do we want to do for 20 years to bring revenue into this town?